I came home after my husband's death to find my mother-in-law claiming my luxury house as hers. I'm Rachel, 32 years old, and until last month I was living my dream life as an architect with my husband Michael. Then an aneurysm took him without warning. I thought grief would be my biggest challenge until I returned home after the funeral to find new locks on my doors and my mother-in-law Evelyn standing in my kitchen. "You're just a wife without rights. This house belongs to family now," she sneered with cold eyes. I didn't argue or beg. I just smiled because in her rush to steal my life, she had forgotten something crucial. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Take a second to like and subscribe before I tell you how I fought back against the woman who tried to erase me from my husband's legacy. I wasn't born into wealth or connections. Everything I achieved came through relentless work and determination. My architectural career started in a tiny cubicle at a firm where I was often mistaken for the secretary. But I clawed my way up project by project until my designs began winning awards. That's how I met Michael. 6 years ago, I was presenting design concepts for a new community centre at a charity gala. Michael was there representing his tech company, which was sponsoring the event. He was tall, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and he couldn't stop asking questions about my blueprints. By the end of the night, we had dinner plans for the following evening. Our connection was immediate and intense. Michael understood my passion for creating spaces that felt like home. He respected my career and pushed me to pursue even bigger projects. Within 8 months we were engaged, and 4 months later married in a small ceremony by the ocean. Not everyone was thrilled about our union. Evelyn Thornton, Michael's mother, attended our wedding with a perpetual frown as if she had just tasted something bitter. When Michael introduced me as his fiancée, her eyes had swept over me with obvious disapproval. "She's very ambitious, isn't she?" Evelyn had said to Michael while I stood right there. Michael squeezed my hand and replied, "One of the many reasons I love her." After the wedding, Evelyn maintained a polite but chilly distance. She would call Michael directly rather than our home phone send birthday gifts addressed only to him, and during holidays, she would speak to me only when absolutely necessary. I tried reaching out multiple times, hoping to build some kind of relationship, but was met with cordial resistance. Michael would sigh and say, "Mom has always been protective. Give her time." Time didn't help. When Michael and I decided to build our dream home, Evelyn's disapproval intensified. We had purchased land in Oak Ridge Estates, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city. As an architect, designing our home became my passion project. I poured everything into creating a space that represented both of us, Michael's love of open light-filled rooms and my appreciation for thoughtful, intimate spaces. Every detail, from the custom staircase to the kitchen island, made from reclaimed wood from Michael's childhood home, told our story. The house took nearly 2 years to complete. When we finally moved in, it truly felt like the physical manifestation of our love. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the garden I had designed with native plants. The library housed Michael's collection of first editions. My office had the perfect northern light for drafting. We had built our sanctuary. 3 years into our marriage, I noticed subtle changes in Michael. He complained about headaches more frequently. Sometimes he would lose his train of thought mid-sentence or become unusually irritable. When I suggested he see a doctor, he brushed it off. "It's just work stress, Rach," he would say. "The Anderson deal is keeping me up at night." But the symptoms persisted. One morning, I woke to find him staring blankly at his coffee cup. "Michael?" I had asked, touching his shoulder. "Are you okay?" He blinked rapidly and smiled. "Just zoned out. What were you saying?" I insisted he see a doctor. He reluctantly agreed, but kept postponing the appointment. In hindsight, this reluctance would haunt me. Perhaps if he had gone sooner. On a Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago, I was getting ready for an important client meeting when I heard a thud from the bathroom. I found Michael collapsed on the floor, unresponsive. My hands trembled so badly I could barely dial 911. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but Michael never regained consciousness. At the hospital, the neurologist explained that Michael had suffered a massive brain aneurysm. Despite emergency surgery, the damage was too extensive. My husband was gone at 36, leaving me alone in the home we had created together. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and murmured condolences. I stood numbly as people shared stories about Michael feeling disconnected from my body. Through my fog of grief, I noticed Evelyn accepting condolences with an unsettling composure. While I could barely stand, she moved through the room with purpose, whispering with Michael's cousins Robert and Diana, occasionally glancing in my direction. At the time, I attributed her behaviour to people grieving differently. How wrong I was. After the funeral, I couldn't bear to return to our empty house. My best friend Sarah insisted I stay with her that night. I collapsed into her guest bed emotionally and physically drained and somehow managed a few hours of fitful sleep. The next morning, I thanked Sarah for her support and headed home desperate for familiar surroundings, despite the pain they would bring. As I turned onto our street, I noticed an unfamiliar car in our driveway alongside Evelyn's silver Mercedes. A moving van was parked at the curb. Confusion washed over me as I pulled in behind them. Perhaps Evelyn had come to collect Michael's childhood mementos. Though she could have called first. I walked up to our front door and inserted my key, but it wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again, jiggling the handle. Nothing. The locks had been changed. My heart began to race as I rang the doorbell, then knocked with increasing urgency. After what seemed like an eternity, the door swung open. Evelyn stood there in a cashmere sweater and pearls, looking at me with mild surprise, as if I were an unexpected delivery person. "Rachel," she said flatly, "I wasn't expecting you." "The locks are different," I said, stating the obvious through my shock. "Yes, they are. For security purposes." She didn't move to let me in. "This is my house," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I need to come in." Evelyn pursed her lips but stepped aside with obvious reluctance. As I entered, the familiar scent of our home was now tainted with Evelyn's cloying perfume. But what truly stopped me in my tracks was the sight of boxes stacked in the entryway and two people moving purposefully through my living room. I recognized them as Robert and Diana Michael's cousins, whom I'd seen perhaps 3 times during our marriage. "What's happening here?" I asked, watching Diana carefully wrapping the crystal vase Michael and I had bought on our honeymoon. "We're getting organized," Evelyn replied, closing the door and walking past me toward the kitchen. I followed her, feeling increasingly disoriented. In my kitchen, my beautiful kitchen that I had designed with sustainable materials and morning light in mind, Evelyn was unpacking items I had never seen before. Floral patterned china replaced our minimalist white plates. Ornate silver candlesticks stood where my herb garden had been. "Organized for what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "And why are my things being packed up?" Evelyn looked at me with something between pity and contempt. "Rachel, I understand this is difficult, but we must be practical. This house belongs to the Thornton family now." I stared at her, unable to process her words. "This is my house. Michael and I built it together." "No," she said firmly. "Michael built it. With family money, I might add. You were just along for the ride." Robert entered the kitchen carrying a box of my cookbooks. "Where do you want these, Aunt Evelyn?" "The garage for now," she replied without looking at him. "We'll donate them later." "You can't do this," I said, finding my voice. "Legally, this house belongs to me. Michael and I owned it jointly." Evelyn's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Oh, my dear, you're just a wife without rights. This house belongs to family now." She pulled a document from a folder on the counter and slid it toward me. "Michael's will. Everything comes to me." I grabbed the paper with trembling hands. It looked legitimate, with Michael's signature at the bottom. The date was just 2 weeks before his death. According to this document, he had left everything, including our home, to his mother. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "Michael would never do this." "He always knew blood was thicker than water," Evelyn said smugly. "He finally came to his senses about your marriage." Diana appeared in the doorway. "We've finished the living room. Should we start on the upstairs?" Evelyn nodded. "Yes, her clothes can go in those black bags." Something snapped inside me. "Stop touching my things. This is my house." Robert appeared behind Diana, his expression stern. "Don't make this difficult, Rachel. Michael wanted his mother to have the house." "I don't believe you," I said, tears streaming down my face now. "Any of you. Michael loved me. We were happy." "Were you?" Evelyn asked with mock concern. "Because Michael told me quite differently. About your fights, your demands, how controlling you were about this house." Every word felt like a slap. Michael and I had disagreements like any couple, but we always resolved them with love and respect. These were vicious lies. "I want you to leave," I said to Evelyn, straightening my spine. She smiled coldly. "No, Rachel, you need to leave. Robert, please show her out." Robert stepped forward and took my arm firmly. "Come on, Rachel, don't make a scene." I tried to pull away. "Get your hands off me. This is my home." "Not anymore," Evelyn said calmly, turning back to her unpacking. "The locks have been changed for a reason. We'll have the rest of your things delivered to wherever you're staying." Robert began guiding me firmly toward the door despite my resistance. As we passed through the living room, I saw my life being dismantled box by box. Photos of Michael and me were already gone from the walls. Our wedding album was nowhere in sight. At the front door, Robert finally released my arm. "This will be easier if you cooperate," he said, his tone almost kind. "Aunt Evelyn is family. You were just passing through." The door closed in my face. I stood on my own porch, locked out of the life I had built, with nothing but the clothes on my back and my purse. Through the decorative glass panels, I could see shadows moving inside strangers, repurposing my memories. I sank down on the steps, buried my face in my hands, and finally allowed myself to break down completely. I drove to Sarah's house on autopilot, tears blurring my vision. When she opened her door and saw my state, she pulled me inside without questions. Only after several cups of tea and half a box of tissues did I manage to explain what had happened. "She can't just take your house," Sarah exclaimed, pacing her living room. "That's your home. You designed it for God's sake." "She had a will," I said numbly. "With Michael's signature." Sarah stopped pacing. "Do you have a copy?" I shook my head. "She just showed it to me. I was too shocked to think clearly." "Then first thing tomorrow we're calling Marcus," Sarah said decisively, referring to her brother-in-law, who happened to be one of the city's top estate attorneys. That night I slept in Sarah's guest room again, though sleep is a generous term for my fitful tossing. My mind raced with questions. Had Michael really changed his will without telling me? Had our marriage been a lie? The Michael I knew would never have betrayed me like this, especially in favour of a mother who had barely acknowledged our marriage. The next morning, Sarah and I met with Marcus in his downtown office. His kind eyes and gentle manner provided the first comfort I'd felt since the funeral. "This situation sounds highly irregular," he said after I recounted my story. "Spouses have significant rights even when wills say otherwise. Do you and Michael have a prenuptial agreement?" "No," I replied. "Neither of us wanted one." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Then in this state, you're entitled to at least half of all marital assets regardless of what the will states. And if you contributed to the value of the house, which you clearly did as its architect, you have an even stronger claim." "But what about the will she showed me?" "We need to see that will officially filed with the probate court. If it exists, as she claims, we can contest it. Wills executed shortly before death, especially when they drastically change previous arrangements, often raise red flags for undue influence or even fraud." For the first time, a spark of hope ignited within me. Michael and I did talk about our wishes. He always said everything would go to me if anything happened to him. Did he ever mention creating a will to that effect? I tried to remember through the fog of grief. Last year, he had a health scare, just elevated blood pressure. But it spooked him. He mentioned seeing his lawyer to get things in order. I didn't press him about it because I hated thinking about losing him. Marcus leaned forward. "That's important information, Rachel. We need to find out if that earlier will exists. Do you have access to your joint financial records? Any correspondence with attorneys?" I bit my lip. "Everything's at the house. My laptop, our files, even my phone charger." "We can get a court order if necessary," Marcus assured me. "But first, let's see if we can access anything online." Using Sarah's computer, I logged into our joint accounts. Most showed normal activity until Michael's death, then several large withdrawals in the days after, presumably by Evelyn using his cards or information. But what caught my attention was a monthly payment to a law firm I didn't recognize. "Lawrence Prentice and Associates," I read aloud. "That's not Michael's usual corporate firm." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "They specialize in estate planning. If Michael was making arrangements, they would be a logical choice." With Marcus's help, I called the firm and identified myself as Michael Thornton's widow. After verification of my identity, they confirmed that yes, Michael had been a client, but they couldn't discuss the details of his estate planning without proper legal channels. "That's actually good news," Marcus said after I hung up. "It means there are documents. Now we just need to get access to them through the court." Over the next few days, I threw myself into investigation mode while staying at Sarah's. I created a timeline of Michael's activities in the year before his death. I found emails in our shared account between Michael and someone named James Prentice, presumably from the law firm. The emails were vague about content, but confirmed appointments. Then I remembered Michael's assistant, Natalie. She had worked with him for years and knew his schedule intimately. I called her and her voice broke when she heard mine. "Rachel, I'm so sorry about everything," she said. "I wanted to reach out, but I wasn't sure if you wanted space." "Thank you, Natalie. I actually need your help. Did Michael ever mention updating his will or estate planning last year?" There was a pause before she answered. Yes, after his doctor's appointment last March. He asked me to clear his schedule for a meeting with a personal attorney, not the company lawyers. My heart raced. Did he say anything about what he was planning? Not specifically, but... She hesitated. He did say something about making sure you would be taken care of no matter what. And he was very clear that his personal financial matters were to be kept separate from his mother's knowledge. He always kept those boundaries. This confirmation sent a surge of vindication through me. The Michael I knew, the man who loved me, was still the person I thought him to be. Natalie, one more thing. Did Evelyn contact you or come to the office after Michael died? Another pause. Yes, actually. The day of the funeral, while you were receiving condolences, she came to the office and asked for access to Michael's files. I told her I couldn't authorize that, but she said, as his mother, she had rights to his personal effects. When I stepped out to consult with legal, she was alone in his office for about 20 minutes. The pieces were starting to fit together. I thanked Natalie and shared this information with Marcus, who immediately filed for an emergency injunction to prevent Evelyn from disposing of any assets until the estate could be properly reviewed. But Evelyn had already begun making her mark on our home. Despite the pending legal action, Evelyn behaved as if the house was undisputedly hers. Through neighbourhood friends, I learned she had hired contractors to begin renovations. One afternoon, unable to resist, I drove by our home and was horrified to see workers removing the custom window frames I had designed to maximise natural light while minimising energy use. The Japanese maple Michael had planted for our 3rd anniversary lay uprooted in the front yard. Through the windows, I could see the walls of what had been our living room, now painted a gaudy gold instead of the soft sage we had chosen together. Evelyn was systematically erasing every trace of our life together, but the renovations were just the beginning of her campaign. 3 days after my drive-by, Sarah handed me an envelope that had been delivered to her house. Inside was a temporary restraining order, prohibiting me from coming within 100 yards of the Thornton family residence, based on claims that I had been stalking and harassing Evelyn. The document cited my menacing presence outside the home and alleged threats I had made all complete fabrications. "This is insane," Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. "You haven't done anything wrong." I felt sick. She's trying to make me look unstable. The legal battle grew increasingly ugly. Through her attorneys, Evelyn began spreading rumours about my marriage to Michael. At a preliminary hearing, her lawyer insinuated that we had been on the verge of divorce, that Michael had confided to his mother about my emotional instability and financial opportunism. She claimed I had married Michael for his money and had been a controlling, emotionally abusive wife. Each lie cut deeper than the last. The Michael described in these allegations was unrecognizable to me, as was the version of myself Evelyn was creating. But her strategy was working. Several of Michael's friends stopped returning my calls. Invitations to social events dried up. People looked at me with uncertainty, wondering if they had misjudged me all along. The isolation might have broken me if not for Sarah's unwavering support and Marcus's steady guidance. "This is a common tactic," he assured me. "Character assassination to weaken your position. But judges have seen it all before. We need to stay focused on the legal facts." The facts, however, were becoming harder to establish. When Marcus subpoenaed Michael's personal effects from the house, Evelyn's attorneys claimed many items were missing or had been damaged in the move. The home office where Michael kept important documents had been completely remodeled, all files removed. Then I discovered something that pushed me to the breaking point. While searching online marketplaces for furniture to furnish the small apartment I had finally rented, I stumbled across listings for items from my own home. My custom-designed desk, the vintage record player Michael had given me for our 1st anniversary, even my grandmother's quilts that had been stored in our guest room closet. Evelyn was selling my personal belongings piece by piece. I called Marcus immediately, and he filed an emergency motion to stop the sales, but the damage was already done. Many items had already been sold to unsuspecting buyers, scattered beyond recovery. That night alone in my sparse apartment, I hit my lowest point. I scrolled through photos on my phone, the only visual reminders I had left of my life with Michael. I questioned everything, even my own memories. Had I misunderstood our relationship? Had Michael secretly resented me? The doubt was corrosive. I called Sarah, sobbing so hard she could barely understand me. "I can't do this anymore," I cried. "Maybe I should just let her have the house. I can't fight the entire Thornton family." "That's exactly what she wants you to think," Sarah said firmly, "that you're alone and powerless. But you're not alone, Rachel, and you're definitely not powerless. The Rachel I know would never let someone like Evelyn win. Her words penetrated my despair. She was right. I had never been one to back down from a challenge. Before Michael, I had built my career through persistence and determination. I had faced sexism and dismissal in a male-dominated field and still succeeded. I was not going to let Evelyn Thornton rewrite my story or erase my marriage. The next morning, I met with Marcus with renewed determination. I need to be more proactive, I told him. Waiting for the courts is taking too long, and meanwhile, she's destroying everything Michael and I built. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I've been doing some digging into Evelyn's past. This isn't the first time she's inserted herself inappropriately into her son's life. I found records of a previous lawsuit from Michael's college girlfriend, alleging Evelyn had harassed her and interfered with their relationship. That doesn't surprise me at all, I said. Michael rarely talked about his childhood, but he once mentioned that his mother had driven away every girlfriend he'd ever had before me. He said that's why he didn't tell her about us until we were already engaged. It establishes a pattern of behavior, Marcus explained. And I've hired a forensic document examiner to look at the will Evelyn presented. If it's a forgery or was signed under duress, we can invalidate it entirely. As we strategized, a memory suddenly surfaced, something I had completely forgotten in the chaos of the past weeks. The safe, I whispered. What safe? Marcus asked. Michael and I installed a hidden safe in our bedroom closet after a break-in at our neighbor's house. It's behind a false panel that looks like part of the custom shelving. No one would know it was there unless we showed them. Marcus leaned forward, suddenly alert. Did you keep important documents there? Yes, our passports, birth certificates, some jewelry. And I closed my eyes, trying to visualize the contents. Michael insisted on keeping copies of all our important legal papers there too. He called it our apocalypse backup, including his will. My eyes flew open. Possibly. He handled that part of our organization. I was always focused on the design aspects of the house. If the original will is in that safe, it would override any newer version, especially if we can prove the newer one is fraudulent, Marcus said, excitement creeping into his professional demeanor. But how do we get to it? You can't violate the restraining order. I thought for a moment. Evelyn hosts a bridge club every Thursday afternoon. She's been doing it for decades, according to Michael. She'd never miss it even now, and the safe is virtually invisible unless you know exactly where to look. Marcus looked concerned. Rachel, I can't advise you to enter the house illegally. I wouldn't be, I countered. It's still legally my house too, regardless of what Evelyn claims. The restraining order is based on false allegations. And if the true will is in that safe, it could end this nightmare immediately. After much debate, we agreed on a plan. It wasn't ideal from a legal standpoint, but with Evelyn systematically destroying evidence, we had limited options. The following Thursday, I parked 2 blocks away from my house and approached from the back through the wooded area that bordered our property. My heart hammered in my chest as I used the path Michael and I had often walked together. I was dressed in nondescript clothing, my hair tucked under a cap. The service entrance near the kitchen had a keypad lock that Evelyn might not have changed since it wasn't visible from the street. I held my breath as I punched in the code, our anniversary. The light turned green and the door unlocked. I slipped inside, finding myself in the mudroom we had designed for gardening supplies and wet shoes. The house smelled different, Evelyn's floral perfume now permeating every space. I moved quietly through the kitchen, which had been partially remodeled, with gaudy gold fixtures, replacing our sleek minimalist designs. I crept up the back staircase, pausing at every creak and groan of the house. The upper hallway was eerily quiet. I moved toward the master bedroom, our bedroom, and pushed open the door slowly. The room had been completely transformed. Gone was our platform bed, replaced by a heavy 4-poster with brocade drapes. The walls, once a peaceful blue, were now a harsh burgundy. It looked like a room in a pretentious hotel, all surface and no soul. I headed straight for the walk-in closet. My clothes were gone, of course, replaced by Evelyn's expensive suits and dresses. I moved to the back wall, where a section of built-in shelving concealed our safe. The shelving was still there, though Evelyn had rearranged the decorative items on it. I carefully moved aside a ceramic vase and pressed on the hidden latch. For a terrifying moment, I thought she might have discovered and emptied the safe, but then the panel swung open, revealing the small steel door behind it. My hands trembled as I entered the combination, another significant date from our relationship. The safe door opened with a soft click. Inside, everything appeared untouched. Our passports lay stacked neatly beside a small jewelry box containing my grandmother's pearls. A waterproof document case held our birth certificates, social security cards, and insurance policies. And there, in a sealed envelope marked Last Will and Testament, Michael Thornton, was what I had come for. I opened it carefully, scanning the pages with growing elation. The will, dated 14 months ago after Michael's health scare, explicitly left everything to me, with specific provisions for certain family heirlooms to return to the Thornton family only after my death. There was no ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation, but the safe contained even more than I had hoped for. A USB drive labelled Estate Planning sat in a small protective case. Next to it was an envelope with my name written in Michael's distinctive handwriting. With shaking hands, I opened it and began to read. "My dearest Rachel," the letter began. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me, and for that I am so sorry. I promised you a lifetime, and I meant it with all my heart. Since that's been cut short, I want to make sure you're protected in every possible way." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. Michael explained that he had created comprehensive video documentation of his wishes stored on the accompanying USB drive. He had done this specifically because he worried about his mother's reaction should anything happen to him. "Mom has always struggled with boundaries," he wrote. "She never accepted that my life was my own, especially after Dad died. I've tried to maintain a relationship with her while protecting our marriage, but I know how she can be. This video, along with the legal documents, should make my wishes absolutely clear and protect you from any potential interference." The letter continued with personal messages of love and encouragement, words I would treasure forever. But for now, I carefully returned it to its envelope and gathered the will and USB drive. I took photos of everything in the safe with my phone before returning the remaining items exactly as I had found them. As I closed the safe and reset the hidden panel, I heard a car door slam outside. Panic shot through me. I glanced at my watch. It was too early for Evelyn to be back from her bridge club. Quickly, I slipped the documents into my jacket and peered cautiously out the bedroom window. A landscaping truck had arrived, the workers unloading equipment. They wouldn't come inside. I still had time to leave the way I had come. I retraced my steps through the house, moving even more cautiously now. As I passed what had been Michael's home office, I noticed the door was ajar. On impulse, I glanced inside. The room had been completely transformed into a feminine sitting room with flowery wallpaper and delicate furniture. No trace remained of the space where Michael had worked from home, where we had often shared late-night conversations about our dreams and plans. I had almost reached the service entrance when I heard keys jingling at the front door. I froze. The main door opened and Evelyn's voice carried clearly through the house. "Yes, we'll need to replace all the bathroom fixtures too. Gold, not that ghastly brushed nickel they had everywhere." She was giving someone a tour. I pressed myself against the wall next to the mudroom door, heart threatening to burst from my chest. If I opened the door now, the motion would surely catch their attention. "The master suite is upstairs," Evelyn continued. "You'll want to see the closets. They need a complete overhaul." Footsteps moved toward the main staircase. This was my chance. As quietly as possible, I slipped into the mudroom and out the service entrance, pulling the door shut behind me. I didn't breathe until I was safely in the wooded area that separated our property from the neighbouring one. As I walked back to my car, clutching the evidence that would reclaim my life, I felt Michael's presence more strongly than I had since his death. He had protected me even beyond the grave, his foresight providing the key to fighting his mother's deception. Back at my apartment, I immediately called Marcus and Sarah. Within the hour they arrived and we gathered around my laptop to examine what I had recovered. The will itself was clear and legally binding, but the USB drive contained something even more powerful, a video of Michael sitting in his office, formally stating his wishes. "This video serves as additional clarification of my last will and testament," Michael said on the screen, his face healthy and animated, so alive it made my heart ache. "I, Michael James Thornton, being of sound mind, declare that upon my death, all my assets, including our home at 1427 Oak Ridge Lane, should pass to my wife, Rachel Thornton." He continued detailing specific aspects of our estate and expressing his deep love and commitment to our marriage. Near the end, he addressed potential challenges directly. "I feel it necessary to state explicitly that while I love my mother, Evelyn Thornton, I am aware of her tendency to interfere in my personal affairs. She has never fully accepted my marriage to Rachel, despite my complete happiness and commitment. To be absolutely clear, my mother is not to have control over any aspect of my estate. This is my clear and uncoerced wish." Marcus watched with growing excitement. "This is extraordinary, Rachel. Combined with the original will and evidence of Evelyn's deception, we have an airtight case. I'll file for an emergency hearing first thing tomorrow. That night, for the first time since Michael's death, I slept soundly, the weight of betrayal and uncertainty finally lifting from my shoulders. The courtroom was imposing, with its dark wood paneling and solemn atmosphere. I sat beside Marcus at the plaintiff's table, dressed in a conservative blue suit, hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. Across the aisle, Evelyn sat with her attorney, looking confident in an expensive cream-coloured ensemble, her hair perfectly styled. She hadn't even glanced in my direction since entering the room. Behind her sat Robert and Diana, along with several other Thornton relatives who had taken her side in the dispute. Behind me was only Sarah, but her presence gave me strength. Judge Harriet Winters, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, called the emergency hearing to order. This is regarding the estate of Michael James Thornton and competing claims to the estate assets, she stated, reviewing the documents before her. I understand we have some new evidence that necessitated this emergency hearing. Marcus stood. Yes, Your Honour. My client Rachel Thornton has recovered the authentic last will and testament of her husband, along with video documentation of his wishes which directly contradicts the will previously submitted by Evelyn Thornton. Evelyn's attorney, a sleek man named Richard Barton, immediately objected. Your Honour, any documents mysteriously found at this late date should be viewed with extreme scepticism. The documents weren't found, Your Honour, Marcus countered. They were exactly where Mr. Thornton left them, in a hidden safe in the marital home, which Mrs. Rachel Thornton has been forcibly prevented from accessing by the defendant's actions, including a fraudulently obtained restraining order. Judge Winters frowned slightly. I'll reserve judgment on the authenticity of these documents until I've reviewed them. Please proceed, Mr. Coleman. Marcus presented the will and then requested permission to play the video. As Michael's face appeared on the courtroom monitor, I heard Evelyn's sharp intake of breath. For 30 minutes, the courtroom listened to Michael methodically outline his wishes, his love for me, and his explicit concern about his mother's potential interference. When the video ended, the silence in the courtroom was profound. I glanced at Evelyn and saw her complexion had turned ashen. Her attorney was frantically writing notes. In addition, Your Honour, Marcus continued, we have the expert testimony of Dr. Lydia Morgan, a forensic document examiner, who has analysed the will previously submitted by Mrs. Evelyn Thornton. Dr. Morgan, a composed woman with grey streaked hair, took the stand and methodically dismantled the validity of Evelyn's will. The signature shows signs of tracing or digital manipulation, she explained, pointing to enlarged images. Furthermore, the document itself is printed on paper with a watermark that wasn't produced until after the date on the will, making it chronologically impossible for it to be authentic. Evelyn's attorney attempted to cross-examine Dr. Morgan, but her evidence was irrefutable. As she stepped down, Marcus called me to testify about finding the will and video in the safe Michael and I had installed together. I spoke clearly about our marriage, the home we had built, and Michael's concerns about his mother's boundary issues. When asked about the events following Michael's death, I detailed Evelyn's takeover of our home and the systematic destruction of our life together. Throughout my testimony, I avoided looking at Evelyn, focusing instead on telling my truth simply and honestly. But when Marcus asked me about the restraining order, I finally turned to face her. The allegations were completely fabricated, I said firmly. I never threatened or harassed Evelyn. She filed the restraining order to prevent me from accessing our home and discovering the evidence of her fraud. When it was Richard Barton's turn to cross-examine me, he tried to suggest that Michael and I had been having marital problems, that Michael had confided his unhappiness to his mother. That's completely false, I replied, maintaining my composure. Michael and I had a loving, supportive marriage until the day he died. Any suggestion otherwise is a fiction created by Evelyn to justify her actions. Finally, Evelyn took the stand. She presented herself as a grieving mother who had only been following her son's wishes. She claimed Michael had expressed concerns about my financial management and had secretly confided in her. He came to me weeks before his death, she testified, her voice breaking in what seemed like practiced emotion. He told me he was planning to leave me the house because he was worried about Rachel's spending habits. But under Marcus's cross-examination, her story began to unravel. He presented phone records showing minimal contact between Michael and Evelyn in the months before his death. He revealed the previous lawsuit from Michael's college girlfriend. Most damaging, he produced statements from Michael's assistant and business partners contradicting Evelyn's claims about their relationship. Mrs. Thornton. Marcus said, his tone measured but firm. How do you explain the discrepancy between your account of Michael's wishes and the video we've just seen recorded by Michael himself? Evelyn's composure finally cracked. That video could have been manipulated, she snapped. Rachel always had him wrapped around her finger. She turned him against his own mother. That house belongs in the Thornton family, not with some gold digger who married into it. The courtroom went silent at her outburst. Judge Winters looked over her glasses at Evelyn. Mrs. Thornton, control yourself. Taran. But Evelyn was beyond control now. She didn't deserve him. 5 years of marriage doesn't make her family. I raised him. I sacrificed everything for him. That house and everything in it should be mine. Her attorney tried to calm her, but Evelyn shrugged him off. Her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. Michael would never have chosen her over me if he was thinking clearly. She manipulated him just like she's manipulating this court. Judge Winters banged her gavel. Mrs. Thornton, that's enough. Please sit down. As Evelyn was led back to her seat by her flustered attorney, Judge Winters called a brief recess to review all the evidence. When court resumed 30 minutes later, her decision was unequivocal. Having reviewed the evidence presented, including the authenticated will dated 14 months ago and the video testimony of Michael Thornton himself, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Rachel Thornton, Judge Winters declared. The will presented by Evelyn Thornton is hereby invalidated as fraudulent. All assets of the estate of Michael James Thornton are to be transferred according to the authentic will with primary inheritance to his widow, Rachel Thornton. She further ordered Evelyn to vacate the property within 48 hours and to return all items removed from the house. Additionally, the restraining order against me was immediately dissolved, and Evelyn was prohibited from contacting me or entering the property once she had removed her personal belongings. As the judge delivered her ruling, Evelyn sat rigid with fury. When the gavel fell, finalizing the decision, she stood abruptly. "This isn't over," she hissed in my direction as her attorney tried to usher her out. "You'll regret this. You're not family. You'll never be family." Court officers moved toward her as her voice rose. "Michael was my son, mine. You stole him from me in life, but you won't steal his legacy in death." As she was escorted from the courtroom, still shouting accusations, I remained seated, feeling neither triumph nor vindication, only a profound sadness for the hatred that had consumed Michael's mother, and a deep gratitude for the love and foresight of my husband, who had protected me even after he was gone. 2 days later, I stood in the foyer of my home, my real home keys in hand. As promised by the court order, Evelyn had vacated the property, though not without leaving her mark. The house I returned to was not the one I had left. Walls had been repainted, fixtures, changed furniture, rearranged or removed entirely. It was like walking through a distorted version of the space Michael and I had created together. The first few days were overwhelming. I catalogued the damage working with insurance adjusters and contractors to estimate the cost of restoring the house to its original state. Some changes could be easily reversed, like paint colours and fixtures. Others were more permanent. The custom built-ins in the library had been ripped out. The handcrafted kitchen island made from wood reclaimed from Michael's childhood home was gone, replaced by a gaudy marble monstrosity. But worse than the physical alterations was the emotional toll of seeing our sanctuary violated. Every room held memories now tainted by Evelyn's brief occupation. I found myself standing in doorways, paralysed by the collision of what was and what now existed. Sarah stayed with me those first few nights, helping me sort through what remained of our belongings. Many items were simply gone, either taken by Evelyn or sold. Our wedding album was never recovered. The first architectural award I had won, which Michael had proudly displayed in his office, had vanished. Pieces of our history together, irreplaceable and precious, lost to Evelyn's vindictiveness. A week after moving back in, I received an unexpected visitor. Thomas Thornton, Michael's cousin from his father's side, knocked on my door one evening. I had met him only a few times at family gatherings, where he had always been polite but distant. "I heard about what happened with Evelyn," he said awkwardly, standing on my porch. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not all of the family agrees with what she did." I invited him in, and over coffee, Thomas shared perspectives on Evelyn I had never heard before. After Uncle James died, she became obsessive about Michael. He was her whole world in an unhealthy way. She drove away everyone he cared about. When he met you and finally stood up to her, it broke something in her, I think. Thomas wasn't the only family member to reach out. Over the following weeks, several of Michael's relatives contacted me, expressing support and sharing stories about Michael I had never heard. Not all of the Thorntons had been under Evelyn's influence, it seemed. Some had simply been intimidated by her keeping their distance from family disputes. These connections, though bittersweet, provided new dimensions to my understanding of Michael and his family history. They helped me see that his strength in establishing boundaries with his mother had been even more significant than I had realized. Our marriage had represented his determination to live his own life, despite her attempts to control him. With time and help from friends, family, and professionals, I began the process of reclaiming our home. I hired contractors to restore what could be restored and reimagine what couldn't. I incorporated elements of the original design while making subtle changes, creating a space that honored Michael's memory without becoming a shrine to the past. The most significant decision I made was establishing the Michael Thornton Foundation for Brain Aneurysm Research. Using a portion of the estate, I created a foundation dedicated to advancing detection and treatment options, hoping to prevent others from experiencing the sudden loss I had endured. The foundation gave me purpose during the darkest days of grief, a way to transform pain into meaningful action. Healing from both grief and betrayal is not a linear process. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of loss pressed down so heavily I could barely breathe. There were nights when I woke crying from dreams where Michael was still alive, only to face the empty reality of mourning. And there were moments of anger so intense they frightened me, not just toward Evelyn, but toward the unfairness of life itself, which had taken Michael far too soon. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, the acute pain began to soften around the edges. I found myself able to think of Michael with smiles as well as tears. I could look at photos without falling apart. I began to design again, my work infused with new depth and meaning. The experience transformed me in ways I'm still discovering. I became more attuned to the importance of clear legal protections, helping friends ensure their own affairs were in order. I developed a keener sense of who deserved my trust and who didn't. And I learned that family isn't defined by blood or legal ties, but by love, respect, and mutual support. My architectural practice evolved to focus on creating secure, meaningful spaces for clients going through major life transitions. I brought a new empathy to my work, understanding viscerally how spaces can either heal or harm during vulnerable times. Today, as I sit in our garden, which is finally blooming again, after being neglected during the legal battle, I hold Michael's letter. I keep it with me always, a tangible reminder of his love and foresight. "Remember that you are stronger than you know," he wrote in his final paragraph. "Whatever challenges come, face them with the same determination and heart that made me fall in love with you. Live fully, love again if you find it, and know that you carry my heart with you always." His words have become my compass. The house around me is both the same and different, like me. We have both been altered by loss and betrayal, but not destroyed. The foundation remains solid. The essence endures. If there's one lesson I've learned through this journey, it's that protecting what matters requires both practical preparation and emotional courage. Michael's careful legal planning saved our home, but it was my willingness to fight for the truth that honored our love. Sometimes standing your ground is the greatest act of love you can offer both to yourself and to those who truly care about you. I don't know what the future holds. Grief still visits me, though less frequently now. I'm learning to build a new life that incorporates the past without being imprisoned by it. I'm discovering strengths I never knew I had and possibilities I hadn't considered. And sometimes in quiet moments like this, I feel Michael's presence not as a ghost, but as a continuing influence, a voice of love and encouragement that transcends physical absence. His mother tried to erase him from my life, but she failed to understand that true connection can't be locked out, sold off, or legally manipulated. It remains weathering all storms, guiding us home. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Or found strength in yourself that you didn't know existed until you were tested? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. This journey has taught me that sharing our experiences helps us all feel less alone in our struggles. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're stronger than they know. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most important thing we can do is stand firm in our truth, even when others try to rewrite it.